Undercover Mounties pushed pressure cooker bomb plan on accused terror couple. This just out from National Post. Surprise, surprise, the RCMP and CSIS have once again completely set up a Canadian here to make him look like he's far more of a terrorist than this guy was ever capable of being. This is again another plan orchestrated by CSIS and the RCMP. The Surrey couple accused of plotting to bomb the BC legislature was taken on a 3-day holiday in the Okanagan by the RCMP so they could relax while working on their terrorist plan. That's what you call, entrapment, when you take these guys out for a little vacation and you coerce them into carrying out a plan that's far bigger than anything they could have dreamed of. Organized after RCMP undercover officers had spent more than 4 months in a futile attempt to have John Nuttal articulate a real plan, the police used the Kelowna getaway to persuade him to abandon a harebrained scheme involving rockets armed with explosives made from cow manure and to use pressure cooker bombs filled with C4. So again, this is all the doing of the Canadian intelligence communities. We reported on this the day after it happened, on July 2nd, 2013. Canada Day bombing, foiled plot or CSIS setup? And back then we were asking the question, is this yet another operation orchestrated by CSIS and the RCMP to instill fear into the minds of Canadians and to condition them for an attack? Well, that certainly appears to be exactly the case. They are conditioning Canadians for an attack. Meanwhile, none of this stuff is real. It's all being completely set up by the RCMP. Here it goes on to say, I thought you wanted to make the pressure cookers, the officer said. I did, but as a distraction, Nuttal replied. Nuttal told the undercover officer earlier that he wanted to arm the rockets with homemade explosives made in part from cow manure. But on the way to the Okanagan, the officer told him, don't worry about explosives. You know what we're going to use? We're going to use C4. C4 for the test? For the pressure cooker, the officer said. So he's completely setting this kid up. The prosecutor goes on to point it out. He says, your instructions were also to discourage him from using, from his rocket plan. My directions were to discourage him from making homemade explosives, and that's what I did. You knew he had none of the equipment or materials to further his rocket plan. Mr. Nuttal already told me about the manure. He could find it anywhere. I was directed and given the objective to discourage Mr. Nuttal from making homemade explosives, and that's what I did. And then you encouraged him to do something that actually did create a public safety risk, building a pressure cooker device. No, says the officer. You were encouraging that in this conversation we just heard, sir. That's the plan you were encouraging. We all heard it. I was discouraging Mr. Nuttal from making homemade explosives. So he's just saying, no, I was discouraging him from making homemade explosives. Yes, but as the prosecutor said, but then you followed that up by encouraging him to shift into using pressure cooker bombs and to use C4 instead. Oh, man. So, again, this is an important one to expose today, guys, because these guys aren't the terrorists. It's the RCMP who you have to worry about. It's CSIS who are the real terrorists. It's the Canadian government who are acting as the real terrorists that we have to be worried about here by manipulating people's minds and trying to set us up to be in this completely just ridiculous fear state here in Canada, so that when an attack happens, everybody's going to think right away, terrorists did it. This must be homegrown. This must be jihadis. This must be something that deserves going over into the Middle East and something that deserves having our own rights taken away right here at home. So it's incredibly important that we expose this right now, guys, as this is going on. Another just insane part to this story is how they're really just laughing off and joking about this guy and some of his beliefs while they're setting him up. Look at this article. Bumbling idiots or jihadi warriors. Tapes played at BC terrorism trials support both views. And they go on here to just joke and laugh about what some of his beliefs are. It says here, at one point during the group's 2-day Victoria mission, during one of his several anti-Semitic rants, Mr. Nuttal pulled out a Canadian $5 bill. He pointed to what he claimed was a Star of David embedded in the banknote design. "It's even on our money," he said. "Wow," said the second brother, acting impressed. "I haven't seen that one." Mr. Nuttal, Miss Cordy, and the second brother took a guided tour through their alleged target. Afterward, an excited Mr. Nuttal told the other undercover officer that the buildings were filled with Stars of David's, plus Masonic and Illuminati symbols, and the number of the beast. He recalled having seen unmarked white airplanes flying in crossover patterns over his Surrey, BC home. He spoke of chemtrails, supposedly. Chemicals sprayed into the atmosphere from the planes, but in fact just another ludicrous conspiracy theory. Governments use chemtrails to control population growth, Mr. Nuttal is heard insisting on the police surveillance tape played this week. After spotting them over Surrey, he recalled, "The next day I blew my nose and this yellow dust came out of my nostrils." On and on the weirdness went. Jurors heard Mr. Nuttal brag of having access to secret military information. The U.S. military had installed intercontinental ballistic missiles at a tiny Canadian Navy facility on Vancouver Island, he told one of his new jihadist brothers. And 256 Canadian soldiers just returned from Afghanistan in Esquimalt near Victoria. They came off submarines that came in here and on a freighter and battleship. Look at this. To their credit, the undercover officers managed to restrain themselves and they didn't crack up and laugh. Portions of the trial do seem close to comedy. This really isn't funny, guys. This is people having their lives set up, and they're being set up as the patsies to take the fall. The whole process would be funny were the accusations not serious, had police and prosecutors not wasted precious resources casting a pair of wide-eyed, bumbling fabulists as terrorist masterminds. Well, yeah, it is a big waste of time. You know, the real terrorist masterminds, as we said, are CSIS and the RCMP for being responsible for creating this guy, for trying to get him to do things that he didn't want to do. That is what you call entrapment. Anyways, guys, just something I wanted to bring to your attention today. Check the links in the description for all the sources to this video. And please stay tuned, guys. We're going to have a lot more videos coming out very soon right here at pressfortruth.ca.